Feel me? Like if I could go back, I'll go back. But I ain't sorry. Like, niggas die every day. Like, he was rapping about it, all type of shit. So I ain't sorry about it, but I send my condolences to the family, and I wish it never happened. But
So do you regret going to the Airbnb that night?
I don't regret nothing, but I wish I never had. Yeah.
But when you say you're not sorry, well, you just seems like you're acting like this is just a circle of life.
One of the people involved in Pop Smoke's death walked out of juvenile detention and was seen publicly wearing hoodies with Pop Smoke's face on them. Not privately, not in his house, out in public, posted online where millions of Pop Smoke fans could see it. His name is King Vermont Rascal. He just turned 20 years old, the exact same age Pop Smoke was when he was killed. And the things he has been saying and doing since he got out have left an enormous number of people feeling like the justice system failed twice over. Once the night Pop Smoke died, and once again when the people responsible walked back into the world with what most people consider no real accountability. Let's go back to February 19th, 2020, because that night is where this entire story begins. Pop Smoke, born Bashar Baraka Jackson, was 20 years old and at the peak of his momentum. His debut mixtape, Meet the Woo, had already made him a certified star in New York. His second tape was pulling serious numbers. He was performing across the country, taking meetings, collaborating with major artists, and living the life that most people who pick up a microphone only ever dream about. He was staying at a rented property in the Hollywood Hills while he was out in Los Angeles, a luxury home that should have been a private and safe space. At some point that evening, information about where he was staying circulated publicly. Some accounts pointed to a social media post that apparently showed gift bags with the address of the property visible on the packaging. However that information spread, the wrong people found out where Pop Smoke was that night. In the early hours of that morning, a group broke into the home. Court documents and the investigation that followed made clear that the people who entered that house included teenagers, juveniles by every legal definition. King Vermont Rascal was among them. What happened inside that house is documented. Pop Smoke was attacked, he was shot, he was rushed to the hospital, and he did not survive. 20 years old, in the middle of everything he had worked toward, gone before the rest of the world got to see what he was going to become. Now let's talk about who King Vermont actually is. He grew up in Los Angeles and has claimed affiliation with the Hoover Criminals, one of the most well-known and most active gangs in the city. The Hoovers have roots stretching back to the 1970s and carry a name that gets recognized immediately in any serious conversation about LA street culture. From everything publicly reported and from his own words across his platforms and interviews, King Vermont has never tried to distance himself from that identity. He leans into it, presents it as central to who he is, and was deeply committed to that life well before the night of February 19, 2020. After the murder, the Lapped worked the case hard and fast. This was a globally high-profile situation, and the department put real resources into it. As the investigation developed, what genuinely shocked many people was just how young the suspects actually were. They were dealing with teenagers who had collectively carried out a home invasion robbery that escalated into a killing. The motive, when it came out in legal proceedings, hit people in a very specific and painful way. This was not a targeted hit over beef with Pop Smoke. It was not connected to anything personal. It was a robbery. They went there to take valuables, jewelry, whatever they could walk out with. In the course of that robbery, Pop Smoke lost his life. The randomness of it, the complete senselessness of a 20-year-old dying because a group of teenagers chose his location, and things escalated, is a specific kind of grief that the people who love Pop Smoke have been sitting with ever since. A significant portion of what helped investigators identify and charge the people involved came from digital sources, social media activity, phone records, communications between participants. These were teenagers in 2020, where every message and every post is potentially evidence that can be pulled in a court of law. The same digital world that launched Pop Smoke's music globally also played a direct role in bringing the people responsible to justice. And then the legal outcomes came out, and that is where public anger reached another level. Because of his age at the time of the crime, King Vermont was processed through the juvenile justice system. When someone under 18 commits a crime, even a serious violent crime involving a death, The law in many states prohibits treating them identically to an adult offender. There are sentencing caps, different facility placements, and in many cases, records that get sealed entirely when they age out of the system. King Vermont served time, but the length of that time measured against the gravity of what happened struck an enormous number of people as insufficient in a way that felt personal and permanent. Pop Smoke's mother, Audrey Jackson, has spoken publicly about what this journey has been like. The grief of losing her child, sitting through legal proceedings, knowing that the people involved would eventually walk back out into the world and live lives her son never got the chance to live. Every time she has spoken about it publicly, the world has listened and felt it, because there is nothing abstract about a mother who lost her 20-year-old son and then had to watch that play out in a courtroom. She carried her son's posthumous album across the finish line and made sure his music reached the world. That project debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 after he was already gone, because the music was that undeniable. And then King Vermont came home. And instead of stepping back from the public eye and using his second chance to build something entirely separate from what landed him where he went in the exact opposite direction. He went online almost immediately after getting out. The energy he brought back, the content he put out, none of it suggested someone sitting with the weight of what they had been part of. He came back posting. He came back loud. He came back with a posture that communicated very clearly to the world that he was not carrying this the way people expected him to. And then the hoodie photos started circulating. King Vermont was seen wearing hoodies with Pop Smoke's image on them. One of the people involved in his death, out in public, posting photos of himself in merchandise printed with the face of the person who was killed. There is no neutral reading of that. There is no version of that image in this context that lands as anything other than a deliberate, public statement. Whether it was intended as a taunt directed at fans, a message to the family, or simply a flex of the fact that he was free and not thinking about any of it. The effect was identical regardless of the intent. The internet reacted immediately, and it reacted hard. Death threats flooded in from every direction. Pop Smoke's fan base is global and runs emotionally deep, and they were not going to scroll past that quietly. King Vermont did not step back from the attention. He leaned into it further. Then came the interviews and online appearances where he addressed the situation in his own words. He said he does not feel regret about what happened. He does not carry guilt over Pop Smoke's death. He has spoken about being free and moving forward in a way that communicated to the world a complete absence of remorse. And that specific absence, not just the light sentence, not just the hoodie, but the repeated public confirmation that he feels nothing about what he was part of, is the thing people keep coming back to. Because people can eventually process that someone faced limited consequences. What is much harder to process is watching that person exit those consequences and then loudly and repeatedly tell the world they would not change anything. And then came reports that he had directed comments at Pop Smoke's mother, at Audrey Jackson, a woman who lost her child and has carried that grief with more public grace than most people could manage. Reports spread that he had made statements people interpreted as mockery directed at her, and that broke something in a lot of people that has not healed since. Because whatever else anyone thinks about this situation, making a grieving mother the target of anything, that crosses a line that most people never come back from, in the eyes of the public. Let's come back to who this story is actually about at its core. Bashar Baraka Jackson was born July 20th, 1999 in Brooklyn. He grew up in Canarsie and found music and turned a raw and completely authentic corner of Brooklyn drill culture into a sound that crossed every geographic and cultural boundary seemingly overnight. His voice was deep, aggressive, and melodic all at once, a combination that was completely his own. There was nobody else who sounded like him, and there still is not. Welcome to the Party did not just take over New York. It crossed the Atlantic, reached artists in the UK who were openly inspired by what he was building, and put Brooklyn back on the map in a way that felt entirely new and entirely earned. Nicki Minaj jumped on a remix. Dua Lipa jumped on a remix. Travis Scott was locked in with him. Major labels were competing hard to sign him. And all of that was happening before he was old enough to legally drink. We will never hear the album he would have made at 22. We will never know what he would have grown into over the next decade. That gap between what exists and what could have existed is the loss that does not shrink over time. King Vermont Rascal is 20 years old right now, the exact same age Pop Smoke was when he was taken. The contrast between what those two people have done with 20 years on this earth speaks entirely for itself. Infamy peaks and then gets buried by the next thing the internet moves on to. Legacy compounds. Every new person who discovers Pop Smoke's music for the first time. Every kid anywhere in the world who hears that voice and feels something they have never felt before. That is what endures, and nothing King Vermont does changes that. Rest in peace to Bashar Baraka Jackson. Pop Smoke, Brooklyn forever. What do you think about how this situation has been handled from the beginning? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one told the right way.